So yeah, thanks everyone who has showed up. Hopefully a few more do kind of log in here. If not, I'm going to send out the recording to everybody anyways with kind of all of the information. But again, big thank you to the One Iota team here with Scott, Kim, and Ryan. Kind of going to run through everything. For those who don't know, I'm Ryan Shaw with the Junior Players Tour. But yeah, I'm going to throw it over to them. They kind of take over from here, and I'm just going to be a spectator like you guys. So thanks again to the One Iota team, and all yours.
Right on. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we'll dive right in. So tonight, or this afternoon, if you're on the West Coast, we're talking about mental skills. We're talking about three things here: confidence, doubt, and fear. So we'll dig into that pretty deeply here. We'll talk about what they are. We'll walk through some ideas around what are personal triggers as it relates to doubt and fear. And we'll talk about some strategies. That'll be the bulk of the conversation today. And then hopefully we got a little time at the end there for some Q&A. So to start off with, really, what we want everyone to understand is even the best actually struggle with their confidence. They struggle with experiencing doubt and fear. And the difference is that they're maybe a little more capable of handling those situations when they arise. I'm going to just pass this over quickly to Scott. He's going to talk about some recent experiences for Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. So as you guys can see, there are two images here. One on the left here is Rory after the 2024 US Open, where in a very tight battle with Bryson DeChambeau, he eventually finished second to Bryson DeChambeau, making a really impressive up and down to win the US Open. And then the image on the right is Rory hugging his caddy, Harry Diamond, after winning the Masters in a playoff earlier this year. Like Kim was talking about, even the best players in the world experience that doubt and that fear when they are competing and in those competitive settings. The main difference being that they're able to manage those things. Rory and Harry very intentionally did a full reset ahead of the playoff. You could see for anyone who was watching the Masters live, Rory was coming down the stretch, and you could even see him struggling a little bit with his confidence and doubting his ability to close out the tournament. Eventually, when they did begin the playoff, Harry pulled Rory aside before the tournament started and reminded him that this was still an opportunity to win the Masters and to close out the career Grand Slam. And that reset set Rory up to be able to play an exceptionally impressive playoff hole and then eventually win the tournament.
Great. Yeah. So again, everyone can go through this experience. It's pretty common. What we're hoping today is that you can learn some strategies so you can get a little more capable of dealing with doubt and fear when they do show up. And so digging into this, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the concepts around this first, and then we'll get into the strategy side. But really, one of the things you can think about here is that there's three typical kind of performance states that people have from a mental perspective. And with all three of these states, they're really based on your perception of a situation or an event and how well you think you can handle it or not handle it. So if we look at confidence, confidence just simply means you have complete trust in your ability to handle that situation. Another way to think about it is you're in control. If we look at doubt, doubt, the easiest way to define it, you can see it right there. It's just uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen or whether you can handle this situation. Another way to think about that is you're losing control. So your thoughts are starting to drift into places where they're not helping you. And then our third mental state that's really important to be aware of is this idea of being in that fear state. And with fear, really you're experiencing this really basic survival mechanism where you're in that fight or flight, or if you've heard of the fight, flight, or freeze mode, you're just trying to get through it. You are probably really completely out of control at that point in time. And those are three really distinct states. We're going to dig into each of these in a little bit more detail here. So we look at confidence. The biggest thing here is you know you can handle this. I can handle this. It's intense trust. It's based on experiences that you've had previously, so previous results and success that you've had. It's also based on this idea of you know you put in the work to derive the reward. So from a golf perspective, you're going to have some previous success in competition. You'll also know that I've been doing the work to get good at this. I should feel confident. The thing about it too is that you're not born with it. And I know we can see some athletes and just think, oh man, they're just confident all the time. Well, they're actually working at it. And it's something that requires work and practice. Again, the key word with confidence is you're feeling like you're in control. You can handle what's going on. You trust in your ability, or you have an intense trust in your ability to get through that situation, whatever it is. We move on, we go to doubt. Doubt's slightly different here, and it's where you're not sure if you can handle this. So you're not all the way into that fear response, but You definitely are not in the confidence response. So lack of conviction, lack of certainty about what's going to happen. And what happens here is when you get into that state, you're going to have some hesitation or overthinking. So it's going to interfere with your ability to actually perform. One of the things we see there is that you actually get a slowdown in your reaction time. It interferes with your coordination. So you can see when you're experiencing doubt, it's going to have a negative impact on your ability to hit a golf ball. Again, the biggest thing here is keep in mind this is like you're losing control. Thoughts are starting to drift to things that you don't want versus getting clear on the targets that you want and how you want to hit a ball. All right. So we're going to do a quick quiz here so everyone can just respond in the chat very quickly. But if we look at your own experience, what makes you doubt your own game? And what we'd like you to do here is identify what you would consider your top doubt based on this list that we're providing. And if nothing fits there, just add in something that's different. So bad shots during warm-up, does that create doubt? Recent struggles in competition or maybe in practice, an unfamiliar course, playing strong competitors, or maybe there are specific hazards and penalty areas on this course that you're playing that really throw you off and cause you to create doubt. So we'll just give everybody a minute there, just see how you respond.
Yep. Get the pad in the paper.
Okay, we got a few responses. See if we can get a few more there. They're trickling in.
We have quite a few related to recent struggles, strong competitors, and then overall skill as well.
Okay, so skill is like the add-in one. So I'm not confident in my skill or I'm doubting my skill. Okay, really interesting. Again, the thing that's important about this is going to be different for everybody. So one person might have doubt around their skill, another person won't. Hopefully by the end of this, you're starting to clue in like what are the things that cause doubt for you. But this is one of the critical things is in terms of doubt, you have to understand what creates doubt so you can better attack it and approach it with strategies that are going to help you actually overcome that doubt. All right. Continuing to move here. So if we go back to fear again, so this is that experience where I absolutely can't handle it. I don't believe I can handle this. So if there was an alligator on course, I'm pretty sure I would not be able to handle that. There'd be no doubt I'd be experiencing some significant fear. And I imagine most of you would be feeling that way, unless you grew up on an alligator farm and you were wrangling alligators as kind of a hobby in your spare time.
We just
Most of,
Me?
most of us weren't doing that.
for Zach.
Why am I doing
He's
So with fear, we've got an unpleasant, a really strong, unpleasant emotion. Again, it's based on this perception of a significant threat. And the thing that's really important with this is that threat can be physical. So the alligator is a good example, or it can be mental. And if we talk about a mental threat, a lot of times this is related to our self-esteem or our self-worth. So if people are watching us, we might perceive that as a threat because we don't want to screw up in front of other people. If we feel like maybe we're letting our teammates down, might be another thing where we feel like, okay, there's a threat here to myself and my team. It leads to this fight, flight, or freeze response. So again, it's a very base level response, and we are, in this sense, emotionally out of control. So we're going to do another quick quiz here. So in your particular case, what makes you afraid on course? So again, just try and select your top fear. You can just write down one or two keywords that represent it. So if you make a mistake in a crucial moment, poor play in front of others. In particular here, we're talking about maybe in front of a college coach or a recruiter if you're looking to get into a college program. Perhaps you're afraid of letting down parents or coaches, not making the cut, maybe hitting a ball into hazards or not bounds, or something else. Wondering if we get a few others this time.
Got a good mix of things here. A few hazards, OB, missing and making cuts, errors in crucial moments, or letting down parents and coaches.
Okay. Yeah. Not really a surprise, I don't think, to anybody. Hopefully you can see though there's a distinction between doubt and fear. And again, similar to doubt, these things are going to be based on you as an individual. So something that is a fearful moment or experience for one player won't bother the next player. So you need to be in tune with what causes you fear and what causes you doubt. Just to wrap up in terms of defining these things, you really need to realize again, like fear, doubt, these are normal experiences, they're normal emotions. You shouldn't be worried that you're experiencing fear or doubt. Every athlete experiences these. Highest level, we've already talked about Rory is a good recent example. And the reason is we're hardwired to identify threat. And there's a lot of ways that we can perceive threat. So again, same situation can trigger a different response in different people. One person can be totally fine with a college coach watching them, and another one's going to feel fear from that experience. What's really important, and again, what we hope you get from the rest of the webinar here is that success is going to be equal to your ability to learn how to manage properly that doubt and that fear. And that's where we're going to spend some time and attention. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of the brain and how it influences and impacts your ability to perform. And so we're going to talk about attention and focus. We're going to talk about your brain's ability to respond under pressure. And we're going to talk about this idea of interference. And so with these, the first of these we're going to talk about is attention and focus. And one thing that's really important for every athlete and coach out there to understand, our brains, as sophisticated as they are, they can really only handle one attention demanding task at a time. In other words, your attention has limits. What this means is your conscious mind, so the mind, the thoughts that you're aware of, you can only handle one attention demanding task at a time. We tend to actually perform best when we're on autopilot, when we're not thinking about a lot of stuff. And we get into this place of paralysis by overanalysis when we're thinking about a lot of things. This picture here, I love this kind of slide of these two pictures. This is showing an elite international soccer player. It's from a number of years ago. One of the best players in the world, well-known photo here. Very intense and focused on something here. And a microsecond later, he's getting smacked in the face with the ball. And this just really demonstrates for us you can only focus on one attention demanding task at a time. If we think about this from a golf context, if you are focused on that hazard or that water hazard or the OB left, and you want to hit a ball right, and your attention is all on the hazard, the hazard, the hazard, well, guess what? You're probably going to hit a ball into the hazard. So again, that's our brain with that attention and focus operating there. So, little test for everybody here. We're gonna think about this attention and focus. Our brain has a filter built into it. So if I say find something yellow, and I gave everybody a couple of seconds in that picture, my guess is you're gonna identify right away these umbrellas right here in the bright yellow kind of goldish colors there. If I said find something else that's yellow, might be a little bit tougher, but you probably can spot something out there that's got a little bit of a yellow tinge or hint to it, and keep going. Now, going to switch things up here a little bit. So keep in mind, our brain has to deal with tens of thousands of stimuli at any given moment. Even whatever room you're in right now, there are literally thousands and thousands of stimuli that you could pay attention to, but it's impossible to consciously pay attention to all of them. So you can see in this picture, there's a lot of stuff here. But here's what's really interesting about the brain. So what I'd like is everyone to look at that picture again, and whatever you do, do not focus on anything red. Now, my guess is that almost every single person here, the very first thing that you went to was a red shirt or a red object. And there's a reason that's happening. Our brain's not really great at distinguishing between do's and don'ts. It's better with verbs and with nouns. So yellow, red. Don't focus on anything red. Your brain goes to red because it doesn't know what else it's supposed to do. So again, here's this idea of you being on the course. If there's a water hazard left of the tee down the middle or down the side of the fairway, and you're aware of it, and that's all you're thinking about, that's probably where your ball's going to go. Even though you don't want that, again, your brain's not good at distinguishing between do and don't. What you need instead is to get crystal clear on what your actual target is, which might be in the middle of the fairway. So the reason this is happening is your brain's got this little filter called the RAS, or the reticular activating system. It's kind of a group of functions that work together to tell you what's most important for you to pay attention to. Again, because there's so many stimuli out there, you could pay attention to all of it, you go crazy. And so this directs you to what's important. It takes you away from anything that's unimportant. And it's influenced by the types of inputs that you give your actual brain. So keywords or affirmations, your most dominant thoughts. It's using your sensory inputs to come up with what's important. So your eyes, your ears, your sense of touch are all directing your reticular activating system to tell you what to pay attention to. This is also why if you've ever been standing in a group, like a large group or a large room with a lot of people in there and you're talking, you can tune out other voices while you're talking to the person next to you. It would also be why in that exact same room, if someone across the room said your name, whether it was directed at you or not, your attention would suddenly shift from the person you're talking with to wherever that sound came from, where you heard your name. So our brain's really designed to use this filter to help us focus on what's important and what's not important. So we have to get really good at feeding it good information or good inputs. Something else that's really important for us to understand is how our brain operates when we're under pressure. And the easiest way to think about this is our brain has two choices or two systems that we default to. One is we get into an avoidance or a threat system. So we perceive a threat, so we get into avoidance mode, or we get into approach mode where we perceive a situation as a challenge. The threat situation, if we get into avoid, it doesn't help us perform, whereas our approach situation, it helps us perform at a higher level. So if we break these down a little bit again, this is similar to our attention system where we can only have one dominant kind of system operating at a time. So when I talked about focus and attention, you can only focus on one dominant or one attention demanding thought at a time. When you're under pressure, you can either be under the avoid approach or you can be under the avoid system, or you can be under the approach system. And when we're talking avoid, you see something as a threat. So perceived threat, whether it's real or not, it could be physical, it could be mental. It triggers a small part of your brain called the amygdala, and it's our fear center. And it gets us into this fight, flight, or freeze response. And what it does is it diverts all the resources from the parts of our brain that support strong performance and put them into fight, flight, or freeze. None of those, when they're activated, help us perform at a high level. On the other hand, if we think about the approach system, it's when we frame a stressor, a situation as a challenge. So it's an opportunity for us to overcome. And what that does is it gets us into taking action and focusing on how to solve a problem. So this is a much better state to be in, or a much better system to access and tap into if you want a better performance. It allows us to tap into creativity, and it allows us to get into our flow states. And when we can get into flow states, we play at our highest level. So a way to think about this is we're challenged, but we feel capable and like we can handle that situation. A couple other things to be aware of as it relates to the impact of doubt and fear. Um, if you're in that not sure I can handle this or I know I can't handle this, there's some physical effects that take place. And so we get some increased muscle tension. Your muscles tend to tighten up. We have a definite disruption in the timing and rhythm of our body's ability or our coordination. We get mind-body disconnect, or what I would call mind-body interference. So your brain and your body don't talk well to each other when you have a high level of doubt or fear, which means in some cases, again, you're going to struggle to perform a skill. You get altered swing mechanics, and most likely you're going to have this experience of your feel being just somewhat off. It doesn't feel right. My guess is everybody on the webinar has had this experience multiple times in your life where you're just a little bit too activated, have too much doubt, too much fear, and you're kind of caught up in this place. So that's the physical effects. If we go to the mental effects or the cognitive effects, this is what tends to happen. So you get into overthinking, you can get into overanalysis. This is the example of you standing over a ball and you can't decide which line you're going to take on a putt, or you're questioning the decision you've already made. Or perhaps you're in between clubs, or you feel like you're in between clubs, and so you're struggling to figure out, well, what am I going to do here? The other thing that's really common when you have a high level of doubt or fear from a mental perspective is we tend to become very self-conscious. So what does this mean? It means we're paying attention to other people watching us and what we think they think of us. In other words, we're worried about making a good or a bad impression on the people around us. So we get out of that place in our brain that allows us to perform at a high level and get into flow state, and we start paying attention to all the wrong things, which leads to poor decision making. And then it can lead to these negative thoughts that tend to linger and they also tend to spiral. And if we talk about this idea of spiral, there's this something called the doubt performance cycle or the downward spiral. And this is basically where your doubt initially leads to the hesitation. And as I talked about earlier in some of those physical changes that happen when we're experiencing doubt or fear, the hesitation means you're actually going to get some mechanical changes in your swing. So your swing slows down, your coordination's a little off, you're not going to hit the ball as pure as you normally do. Those changes then lead to poor shots. Those poor shots reinforce your doubt, and all of a sudden, you're on the bogey train. And again, for a lot of you, you've probably had that experience of two, three, four holes in a row where you've hit bogey after bogey after bogey. Most likely, you had some experience of doubt and fear that you didn't manage effectively, and all of a sudden, this starts happening. So again, good reason for us to be really aware of this. I'm going to pass this over to Scott because he's got maybe a counter example here a little bit.
Thanks, Kim. So early on, we talked a little bit about how the best performers in the world are able to manage the doubt and the fear, even though they still experience it, and are able to turn that around and reframe that in order to begin to use this approach system in their minds. So this image that you can see on this slide here of Rory is from the 2012 Ryder Cup, where very famously the European team was not playing particularly well and had not scored very many points heading into Sunday's singles matches. For those of you that have followed the Ryder Cup previously, the home team typically has a significant advantage, like many other sports. And this year's Ryder Cup, or that year's Ryder Cup, excuse me, was in Chicago, Illinois. So the European team was playing away, and going into the finals on Sunday, they were down 6 points to 10. So the Americans had pretty well dominated the European team throughout the majority of the Ryder Cup to this point. And on the final matches on Saturday, Rory McIlroy and Ian Poulter very famously won their final two holes to beat Jason Duffner and Zach Johnson one up to secure only the second point of the day for the Europeans. Jose Maria Olazabal, who is the captain of the European team, very famously spoke to his team and very effectively reframed the position they were in to trigger the approach system, to remind them of the opportunity that they had to make a comeback. And he also used Seve Ballesteros' passing away the year previous as motivation for the European team. Seve was an incredibly famous golfer and won many European, was part of many European victories in the Ryder Cup. And the European team ended up storming back, winning 8.5 out of a possible 14 points in the final day to end up recapturing the Ryder Cup that year. And that's an incredibly famous Ryder Cup that ended up being renamed the Miracle at Medina. And all of the players, at least in part, give a lot of credit to the captains and the staff of the teams that reminded them of the opportunity that they had to make the comeback that they did.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, really good counterexample to this downward spiral. It can go the opposite direction. So a quick quiz based on what we've talked about here so far. So which brain system helps us perform better under pressure? Is it the memory system, the avoid system, the language system, or the approach system?
So far, so good in the chat here.
All right, so people are picking what, Scott?
Everyone has picked the approach system to now.
Yeah, you've got it, right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Again, just that idea of like you can see an event, a situation, a stressor is either a threat, which puts you into the avoid system, or you can see it as a challenge. Scott's example, the Ryder Cup, they were struggling a bit. So at the beginning, it was seeing it like a threat. This difficult circumstance, playing in the States, not having everything kind of go in their favor, reframed it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a challenge that they can take advantage of, an opportunity to pursue. All right. Next, another really simple quiz here. How many attention demanding tasks can our conscious mind handle at one time? Is it 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 5 to 7, or one?
All the responses so far in the chat are one.
Yeah. And so you've got it, right? Our brains can handle one attention demanding task at a time. What's tricky here is what's an attention demanding task? And so for all of you standing over a tee, you're looking down a fairway, there's a water hazard on the left that you don't want to go into. Guess what? Even though it's not a skill to look at that and think about it, it's an attention demanding task. It's occupying your conscious mind. So if you're thinking about the water hazard and you don't want to go in there, you can't at the same time be thinking about the target that you want to hit in the middle of the fairway. So one attention demanding task at a time. Really important concept. Okay. So we've kind of laid out the groundwork for this. You understand what's going on in the brain. We've talked about doubt. We've talked about fear. We have some semblance of an understanding of confidence. Now we're going to talk about these strategies to help you build confidence, deal with that doubt, and face your fear. And we're looking at some off-course strategies and some ones that you can use on course. What's important here is if you're going to get good at these three things, you actually have to do some work off course and you have to have some techniques, tools, tricks that you can use while you're on course and actually playing. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are these off-course strategies. And there's three pretty basic ones, but they have a lot of impact. And the first of these is to engage in journaling. And the reason that we want to engage in journaling, and we encourage this with all athletes, is it helps you become more aware of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what you might do differently. And so with that, here's a very simple practice that I would encourage everybody who's watching to start doing if you're not already doing. And it's post-training, it's post-competition. Spend 5 minutes, doesn't take much more than that, to go through three questions. What went well today? And you should be trying to identify three things. What needs work? And there you should only really try and focus in on one thing. And the next thing is, what will you change for next time? Or in other words, what will you do better next time? And the idea here is if we focus on the what went well, we're starting to reinforce confidence in our brain. So we're looking for positives. The tendency right now is post-play. Most of us, unless we played exceptionally well, we're picking apart everything we did wrong. This didn't go well on hole 3. I didn't hit that driver. It was bunty. I missed that easy putt. All those things that keep running through your head. It's like, wow, I didn't do that very well. But the reality is you probably did a ton of things really well on course, and we need to start learning how to point our brain towards them, because if we don't, we're going to experience that downward spiral. So journaling is one of those tools that can help you identify the things that you're doing well and narrow your focus to one thing that you want to improve on. Second thing here is scenario cards, and we introduced this concept at our last webinar. So if you saw that webinar, you're familiar with this. If you didn't, brand new idea, but it's basically this. You're going to identify the situations that lead to doubt and fear for you, and then you're going to map out a strategy or an approach that you think will work in order to deal with them. So there's some free downloads on the JPT site as well as on our site where they have these scenario cards. We have blanks and we have examples of ones. You can download one of those, and even just knowing that scenario tends to trigger you, and having an approach that you can try will help reduce the fear and the doubt and increase your confidence that you can manage that particular situation. And the key thing here again about that, it's your interpretation or your perception of an event. So having a strategy tends to reduce the fear factor related to one of those situations. Last thing here from an off-course perspective that you can engage in is understanding your doubt triggers and then reframing them. And so we encourage you to create a list here. It's basically a 3-column chart. And on the left-hand column, you're going to list your top 5 doubts that you think you regularly experience when you're out on course. And one of the things we want you to do is actually challenge their validity. If you think I'm terrible off the tee or off the first tee, challenge that. Is that always the case? What makes that true? What maybe makes that false? And ultimately, what you're going to see is one of two things. Either, yeah, there's some truth to it, but it's not as big a deal as I think it is. Or two, there's no truth to it. I don't need to worry about that. It's just a doubt. Don't have to hold on to it. Ultimately, where we want to get you to is where you're going to reframe that doubt into some type of confidence. So an example here is like, I'm terrible off the first tee might be like, I'm ready to go off the first tee, and I make sure I'm ready to go off the first tee. Or even if I don't get a great shot off the first tee, I recover and the rest of my round's fantastic. Okay, here's the other off-course strategy that we really promote and think is a really powerful one. It's called the success protocol. And there's four pieces to it. So the first of these is a breath. Second is an affirmation, and then we look back and we look forward. And just a really quick explanation, and then we're actually going to try this. So from a breath perspective, when you breathe, it's a way to get grounded, to get focused, to get present. And with the breath and the success protocol, we want to inhale, hold, and exhale for a little bit longer than the inhale. Again, it's a way to gain control. We get focused, we calm down, and our nervous system relaxes a little bit. The second part of this is this affirmation, and here's where we're really starting to work on the confidence building. And typically, it's going to be a combination of a statement about your greatest strength plus an ultimate objective. So an example here might be, I work harder than the competition and I'm a dominant college player. So that would be an example of an affirmation statement that you'll say. We'll do a variation on this here today. But again, it's building and reinforcing confidence rather than letting your brain drift to negatives, which are pretty easy to drift to. Now, the next thing we have is a look back. So another way to think about this is a movie of all your best moments playing, or it's a highlight reel is another way to think about it. So previous success, great moments where you performed well and you followed and honored the process that works for you. So it could be a whole event, it could be a series of holes, it could maybe be one hole where you played well. So even if you don't feel like you have a ton of these experiences, everybody watching's got at least one or two of these that are actually real positive experiences you've had where you performed well. You can use that as part of your highlight reel. And then the look forward is a variation. It's like we're predicting the future, but we're using the highlight reel concept as a way to do it. So we're creating a movie of the future and we're picturing ourselves perform well in critical moments and also from recovering from setbacks or doubt when we're thinking about our next event. So again, this idea of the success protocol, it's something that you can do off course. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can be doing this as a guided imagery, which is what I'm going to do with you here coming up in the next section, or you can do it as a self-guided. So you just talk through or think through this. But we're going to give this a shot. So going to get everybody to basically sit up straight wherever you are right now. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. And I'd like you to pick out a spot, either on the wall or on, something in front of you that's right about eye level and focus on that spot. Now, as you focus on that spot, just gently let your eyes shut when you're comfortable. And now you're just going to put your attention onto your breathing. So as you inhale, you're going to take in a nice deep breath, whether it's through your nose or your mouth. When you get to the top, you're going to hold it. And then you're slowly going to exhale and make sure that exhale is a little longer than the inhale. And you can just feel yourself calming down and getting present. So you're going to continue to breathe. You're going to inhale. You're going to hold. And then you're going to exhale and let that exhale extend longer than the inhale. Just focusing on one breath at a time. Now, as you continue to focus on your breathing, you're going to repeat the following statements to yourself. And the first of these, and these are under your breath. So I control what I can control. I trust my routines and process. I always put in my best effort. I carry myself with confidence on course. So again, I control what I can control. I trust my routines and process. I always put in my best effort. and I carried myself with confidence on course. All right, keep breathing, keep your eyes closed. As you continue to breathe, gonna inhale, small pause, hold, and you're going to exhale and make sure that exhale extends longer than the inhale. And as you do this, I want you to start recalling a recent success on the golf course. It can be from competition, maybe it's a series of holes, maybe it's a single hole, or even just a series of shots. I want you to try and see this like a highlight video. You're going to see it. You're going to engage all of the senses as well. So you're going to try to feel it. You're going to hear it. You might be able to smell the grass or the trees. You can hear the sounds of the birds, other people talking, maybe the sound of the club hitting a ball. And remember what it felt like to perform at this time. Remember the feel of the club in your hand, making great contact, feeling like everything was easy and in your control. And just keep playing those memories just like they're happening right now. You can feel yourself hitting great shots. You can hear the sound of making fantastic contact with the ball. And you can hear that you're dropping putt after putt, and you can see yourself dropping putt after putt. Remember playing with poise and confidence, and you feel like you're playing to the best of your ability and you're fully in control. Now continue to take breaths. Breathe in, hold, and extend your exhale. And now we're going to shift gears a little bit. Now I want you to start picturing an upcoming event for you. So first you need to identify the event. So get the name of the event in your mind. And if you can, try and picture the course, the clubhouse, and maybe even the practice area. Try and experience yourself out there right now. See it, feel it, engage all of your senses. And imagine arriving at the course that you're full of energy. Maybe you're feeling a little bit nervous, but you quickly frame this as excitement and you remind yourself that you're ready to take on this challenge and you can't wait to get going. You have a good warm up. You're feeling mentally and physically ready to go. From the very first hole, you're making great contact. You feel like everything is easy, under control, and you're hitting great shots with every club in your bag. The greens are easy to read, and you are dropping putt after putt after putt. You feel yourself playing with poise and confidence, and you recover quickly from any setbacks, any little distractions or doubts. You acknowledge them, refocus, and you simply move on to your next shot. You are completely focused on those things that are within your control, your routine, your process, and where you direct your thoughts and energy. You see yourself meeting the pressure of the moment, performing at your highest capability. As you're picturing this, now I'm going to count down from 10 to 0. And I want you to keep seeing yourself playing that highlight video of your next performance as if it's still happening right now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And when you're ready, you can start to come out of this relaxed state. You might take another deep breath, hold, and then exhale. You can start to wiggle your fingers, your toes, and then slowly open your eyes if you haven't already done so. And put your focus back on that spot on the wall in front of you that you first looked at. Once you get that spot lined up, you're again fully present, fully focused in the here and now. All right. So probably a range of experiences there. That was roughly about a 5-minute walkthrough on a guided meditation and mental rehearsal. And it's the whole idea of a success protocol. Everything we're doing in that particular thing is trying to help you increase your confidence and deal with the potential of doubt and fear. So something that you can practice. It doesn't take much time. There are opportunities for you to do a little bit more of that work, whether in coaching or there are some videos out there, there's audios out there, and through us. But the idea here is that success protocol, that mental rehearsal, is training your brain to develop confidence and feel like you can handle moments where you can experience doubt and fear. Another strategy here that's really important to talk about as we switch gears a little bit is self-talk. And self-talk is this thing that's happening constantly. So we need to recognize the impact of it. And one of those things about self-talk, and I've alluded to it already, is there's a little bit of a negativity bias that all of us have. And it's there for a reason. But really, we have tens of thousands of thoughts on a daily basis. They're automatic. The bulk of them actually end up being negative, and that's normal. What's important here is we need to be aware of them and we need to recognize as well that we don't have to chase every single negative thought that we have. So a way to think about this is this idea of BYOBF, and I'll explain that in a second here. But I'd like everyone here to just imagine that you're walking down the course with your best friend. And maybe you're not having the best of days. What would they probably say to you? And how would you probably feel? And I ask this question a lot with the athletes I work with, and typically they're like, your best friend would tell you it's not that big a deal. It's okay. You're going to get the next shot. And typically the response is, you feel okay with that. It makes you feel a little bit better. You're not as worried about it, or you're not focused on beating yourself up. And so with this, you need to become your own best friend. Or another way to think about it is you got to learn to be your own best caddy. And I'm going to counter this a little bit or show you the opposite of this. When we are out playing, we are typically a little different. And so I'm going to reframe this. Imagine if your best friend went out on course with you and every single time you made contact, took a swing, they told you how terrible you were. They told you how bad of a player you were, how bad of a shot you made. They pointed out all your mistakes. Now, when I ask that of people and you say, how long will they remain your best friend? Usually it's not very long. You'd kick them off the course, you'd get in a fight. It wouldn't be a happy experience. And here's the reality is for most of us, we're out there, we're the person we're with the whole time out on course, and we're talking to ourselves like that. Everything we do is bad. That shot sucked. That was a dumb mistake. Wow, I can't believe I made that read. All of those things. And so we need to be aware of that negative thinking and get back into this idea of you need to become your own best friend or your own best caddy and provide some encouragement to yourself. So we got to be aware of that self-talk. All right, a couple other things here. We're going to move into some different tools, and these are more in the moment while you're on course types of tools. And a couple simple ones. Again, we're talking self-talk. One of those that you've probably heard of before is this idea of cue words or mantras. And these are just simple statements that help you stay focused on something that's important. And so if you're struggling to get through a whole round, maybe one of those statements might be something as simple as, I can do this. I can do this. Or I'm still in it. If you're worried that you're not going to make the cut, I'm still in it. I'm still in it. Another one would be maybe something simple that's more of a performance cue. So a steady, solid stroke. If you're worried about your putting technique, it could be simple as that. Steady, solid stroke. Another thing that we do from a self-talk perspective is this idea of reframing. And it's really important to recognize when we have a thought or emotion that's not necessarily serving us well, we want to reframe it to something that can serve us better. So we talked earlier about this idea of you show up at course and you may be feeling a little nervous. Well, we want to reframe that. So instead of nervous, where we feel like we're losing control or we might be completely out of control, we want to reframe it as something that's excited. I'm excited. So instead of I'm nervous, I'm excited. It means I'm getting ready to play. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to the challenge. Another example of this is I've got the jitters to, well, I'm ready. My body's ready to go. So a couple of really simple, straightforward examples. I'm going to pass this off to Scott here and he's going to talk a little bit about this idea of negativity management.
But with negativity management, it speaks a little bit to what we have discussed already, which is that everybody has negative thoughts. And those are things that are just going to happen. But here are some strategies that you can manage those with. So to begin with the parking, the example that's best to describe this is if you've gone shopping before, either you drive yourself or your parents or guardians drop you off. Once you park your car and walk into the mall, you're aware of where the car is, you know where it is, but you're not actively continuing to think about the car while you meander through some stores or look for different items that you went to the mall for in the first place. A similar sort of counter example of that is if we imagine a backpack that you're carrying and every negative thought you have is a rock. If every time you had a negative thought, you took that rock and you put it in your backpack and continued to carry it with you, after a while, if you have several negative thoughts, your backpack is going to start to feel really, really heavy. One of the ways that you can manage that, though, is actually taking those rocks out of those bags and then making the decision to recognize that you were carrying a rock with you and make the active decision to leave that rock behind. We have two more examples there that are just more of a visual cue, or sorry, a visualization of that same idea. You can think of those thoughts as what they are negative thoughts that you want to get rid of. And you can imagine yourself taking those thoughts and throwing them into a garbage can and leaving them behind there, getting rid of them like as you would with any other garbage that you didn't want to continue to carry with you. Another option as a visual there as well is taking those negative thoughts and actually putting them into water and letting those thoughts sink to the bottom of whatever body of water that you feel most comfortable imagining, and then leaving them behind there as well. And then my personal favorite, a LPGA Tour legend, Annika Sorenstam. One of the ways that she managed negative thoughts was to quite literally pull the thought out. So Annika Sorenstam held herself to an extremely high standard. And oftentimes she had a little bit of difficulty letting go of some of the errors, whether they be physical execution errors or mental performance errors like negative thoughts or continuing to dwell on negative thoughts. Eventually, she found what worked best for her was to quite literally imagine that she is physically pulling that thought out of her mind, holding on to it, and then actively deciding to let it go. So she would tie a physical cue to reinforce getting rid of that negative thought that she had, pulling it out of her mind, and then casting it aside and moving on from it and deciding to leave it behind. An additional super simple and super powerful negativity management tool is the win or learn perspective. When things happen to you on the golf course, you can either see them in two different perspectives. Either it's a win or you're learning from it. So, for example, you're in the middle of the fairway and you hit a perfect 7-iron and you think that that's exactly the right distance and you hit it to 35 feet. Great. That's a win. Maybe it's not as close as you wanted to hit that shot, but you can frame that as a win. You executed it the way that you wanted it to, and you did exactly what you wanted to do. As far as you're concerned, that's all that you could have taken care of. On the flip side, perhaps you hit that exact same shot, and it turns out you actually misjudged the distance. And even though you hit your 7-iron exactly the way you wanted to, it's now airmailed the green and you're over the back and not a very good position. You could let that negative outcome weigh you down and carry that with you for an extended period of time, or you can use the win or learn perspective, consider what happened there, realize that maybe you had just made an error on the distance calculation that you had, learn something from it, and then move on from it so that you don't have to continue to carry the outcome with you and instead learn something from it and then move on.
Great. So we can see these are like pretty straightforward examples of things you can use in real time out on course when you're experiencing some challenges. We're going to share one more that's really important on course, and it's a way to help you not only manage your thoughts and emotions, but just to be aware of where you're at. And oftentimes in working with juniors, I find that they're not always tuned in to what they're experiencing in the moment. And so it's kind of like traffic lights or mental traffic lights. Think about green light, yellow light, and red light. And so when we see a green light, if we're driving out on the roads there, we know that means go. It means everything's good, go. Another way to think about that is when you have green light and you're performing, you're in control. Things are going well, you don't need to question it. So you just keep going, ride the wave, so to speak. Yellow light's a little different. This is like where we're starting to lose control. Our thoughts are starting to maybe drift a little bit to things that aren't useful to help us perform or things that we're maybe a little bit concerned about, right? So I might be starting to think about the score a little too much. Or maybe my brain every once in a while is drifting back to one hole that I let get away from me. So you're losing control. The way to think about this, similar to the traffic light, it's caution. It's time to pay attention, slow down a little bit. And really, what you want to do here is just refocus on what it is you want in this particular moment. And that's going to help you get back into this idea of being in the green light. And then we have this last category, and it's called red light. Okay. And this is where you're out of control. So the equivalent from a traffic light perspective, you have to stop. Your thoughts are drifting and you can't bring them back. You can't seem to get focused on the thing that's actually really important. And so we're going to use a three-part technique here that allows you to get back in control. And it starts with a physical action. So the very first thing you're going to do, and it's going to wake you up, is you're going to do what's called a snap, a slap, or a clap. Okay. So I'm going to get everyone right now just to take your hands, kind of put them in front of your face, a little bit like this. And I want you to clap your hands hard together. Okay. Hard. So you should be able to hear that kind of slap, really loud sound. Okay. That's just going to wake you up. This is an easy thing you can do on course. The other version of this that you'll see athletes do sometimes is they'll slap their thigh. Okay, it's a wake up. It's like wake up, pay attention. And then the second thing that we're going to do is that breath. So it's that long inhale, hold, slow, extended exhale. And what the breath does is it gets you in control. Okay, so you've woken up, you're kind of present, breath. You do that. Now you're in control. And now we're going to shift gears here and we're going to have a TIFF, which is either a thought, an image, or a feeling on the thing we actually want. Okay, so I talked about this example earlier where I'm on a tee box. I've got a water hazard on the left, kind of down the middle of the fairway, and I'm focused on that and I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe I've hit into that water hazard multiple times before and I can't let it go. I'm really worried about going there again. All right, I would use this process. I get myself to pay attention, be present. I do my breath, and now I'm going to go to a thought, an image, or a feeling that I want. So maybe it's the feeling of a great swing that I've executed tons and tons of times before off that tee. Maybe it's just a picture or the image of me hitting the ball right to the middle of the fairway. Or maybe it's just that good positive feeling I've had when I've hit good tee shots before where they're under control. So it's a thought, image, or feeling that refocuses you to what you actually want and takes you away from what you don't. But when you're in red light, it's not enough just to recognize the thought and then try and shift. You actually have to have that physical action that wakes you up, regain control with the breath, and then point your direction into the thought, image, or feeling. All right. Couple of quick questions for you. So, a quiz. Which strategy do you think you would implement at the first shot of your tournament? Would it be a deep breath? Would it be one of the parking lot strategies that Scott walked you through? Would it maybe be something like reframing, so changing nerves to excitement? Or do you think it'd be a different type of cue word? And we'll just get everyone to write that in the chat again here quickly.
With quite a few reframing and deep breath.
Okay.
One, all of the above.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the reality, folks, is like all four of those are going to work. The thing is, one of them probably works better for you than the other three. And so your job, your role is to figure out like, when I'm in certain situations where I either experiencing some nerves that are a little too much or I have some doubt, what works for me to get me back on track? Is it a deep breath? Is it maybe like the Annika Sorenstam pulling the thought out of your head? Is it reframing nerves to excitement or maybe a different kind of keyword? Like all of them can work, but you need to have something that you know works and that you'll go to. It's not enough to stand on the tee box and just go, oh, I'm in trouble. All simple strategies, and they're really effective. Okay, so we've gone through a bunch of stuff here. Question for you is how confident are you that you can use at least or find at least one tool or strategy from today to help you better handle doubts and fears? So your choices are very confident, somewhat confident, neutral, uncertain, not confident at all.
quite a few people feeling very confident, a couple
Okay,
people feeling somewhat confident.
good. Yeah. I mean, hopefully we brought you somewhere into this either somewhat confident or very confident. There are a lot of simple things that you can do that can be really effective to help you on course. Um, and we'll talk just a little bit here as we wrap up. Like now we got to put all this together, okay? So we've introduced a bunch of stuff, a few things here for you. One, focus on finding patterns about you. So everybody's unique. You need to identify the specific doubt and fear things that cause or are triggers for you. Again, we're all built a little differently. There are certain things that you know consistently probably send you down that path. Secondly, you need to understand what your own physical signs of, say, anxiety are so that you can identify them early so you can deal with them. Not everybody gets sweaty palms. Maybe you can feel like your heart's in your chest, or maybe you just get an uneasy feeling in your stomach, but you'll have something. And then the last thing around finding patterns is really understand the thoughts that you have and tend to experience when you feel pressure. So maybe you start to think like you're a superhero and you're going to blast every ball longer than you've ever hit it before. And that does happen for some athletes, right? So just be aware of what's going on. So once you've identified those patterns, now based on the stuff we've shared with you today, try and identify 2 or 3 off-course tools you can use, and maybe 2 or 3 on-course tools that you could try and use. And maybe you've got 1 or 2 that you're already using that seem to work, but this is where it's worth kind of experimenting a little bit. Off-course journaling, the mental rehearsal, a couple of examples. On course, we talked about parking, the self-talk strategies, the red light, yellow light, green light. And then you want to implement. So you need to create a plan to put these into practice. And really, the best way to do this is focus on one tool at a time and get good at that tool. As you're using that tool, whatever it is, try and use it in a low pressure situation first, and then put it into practice in a competition. And the other thing on the mental side here related to this that will help you increase your confidence and be more effective with doubt and fear, spend a little time every day. So it could be 15 minutes, even less than that. If you just spend thinking about this and working on this, it'll have a huge impact. So just imagine like you don't expect to take your driver, you've never hit it before, and you're going to go out and blast that thing 300 yards. You work at it and you continue to work at it. It's the same on the mental. If you know that there's certain things that create doubt and fear for you when you're out playing, you need to spend a little time working on them. And if you do that, you're going to improve. Couple other key takeaways here. So this is a summary of some of the things we talked about. So key ideas, fear and doubt are totally normal. So the fact that you're having fears or doubts on course, it's nothing to be upset about or concerned about. What's really important is that you learn strategies to deal with them. And a couple other hints here. Confidence means you're in control. You have total trust in your ability to handle a situation. Doubt, you're starting to lose control. It's that yellow light idea. Fear, you're out of control. It's red light time. You got to stop, reset. Coupled with this is this idea that your confidence can be developed. It's not some innate skill that some people are magically born with and others don't have. It's something to work on. The other thing here, really important, your brain and performance. We need to understand that your brain is actually designed to help you perform, but it depends on how we perceive things. And so if we perceive something as a threat, it's going to drive our response. And so we need to get really good at identifying situations and trying to move from an avoid or that threat response to an approach, which is seeing it as a challenge and an opportunity for you to overcome. We're kind of repeating ourselves here on the last one, but with strategies. So we need to have some both on-course and off-course strategies in order to get more effective at dealing with this. And your consistency around practicing are going to be essential. So you can't think about self-talk once or do one guided imagery or guided mental rehearsal and think, oh, okay, I've got this thing nailed. You don't. You got to put a little time and energy into it, but it doesn't take much. Okay.
Kim mentioned earlier when he was talking about the scenario cards that we have downloadable resources for you, both on the JPT website and then our own One Iota website. Those are the forms that you can see on the left there. We have several of them, and we didn't want to flood you with too many pages here to look at. So go check those out. There's loads of great resources there. Like Kim mentioned, they do need to be worked on. It takes less effort than people think it does. So put a little bit of time in and invest a little bit of time there, and you'll be really surprised at how much of a gain you're able to make. The images on the right side with a little bit more color, those are screenshots of our website and our One Iota Golf app. what you can see there is the tournament prep, as well as the daily tasks, and then some of our drills and our recommendations that we provide according to your golf stats, as well as your mental performance stats that you input throughout your golf stat input. So we calculate all of those different components that you can work on with your performance in your game, and then provide recommendations for you as well. So our One Iota app is a great resource to use as well.
Great. All right. So that's everything we've got. We can open it up to questions and answers there, Ryan, if there's time for that. I know we're right on the hour here, so
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody's got questions, just unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask, or just through the chat function, whatever works best for you guys. I don't really have any questions. No, that was great.